Hello everyone, welcome back to another edition of the Benchwarmer Sports Podcast. Raffi here, joined by Davian. Davian, there's been some action, a lot of motion, especially in the NFL recently. I know that we were all expecting the A.J. Brown trade, and trust me, on this podcast we will be discussing that. But there happened to be another big trade that happened. And no, I'm not talking about Aaron Rodgers coming back. Obviously, that's not a trade, but that's not the big news that we're going to be discussing today. But we got a lot to talk about between that, those two trades that just went down June 1st, and then also the NBA draft lottery, which we wanted to do on the last podcast, but because you kept talking about the Knicks and gassing them up, we did unfortunately not have enough time to get to that. But then again, I can understand as if the Blackhawks, once they make it back to the Stanley Cup final, which will likely be next year, of course, I will be certainly taking up 15 minutes of the podcast talking about why the Blackhawks are winning the Stanley Cup. So I can understand. I'll give you pity. But Davian, before we get into everything that we're going to get into today, because it's going to be quite a jam-packed show, how are you? Are you feeling... How are the vibes right now? Are you feeling excited? Are you feeling anxious? Are you feeling just overall... What is the vibe of one Davian Gekman at this juncture right now?
Dude, I'm pumped. The Knicks are going to the finals. A.J. Brown is a New England Patriot. How else could I feel? It's all good vibes. The Knicks are going to win in 6 games. Going to be in the greatest city in the world tomorrow.
Chicago?
As we're recording this on June 2nd.
You're going to be Chicago?
No, sorry. New York City, buddy.
No.
It's okay.
Pizza. More mid pizza.
Enjoy your little bean. Anywho, I'm super excited. The NHL Stanley Cup championship has finally kicked off. We're going to finally figure out who gets to lift Lord Stanley. I don't know if you saw, Raffi, but the NHL viewership for these past playoffs has been off the roof. I think each round has had a 50+% increase in viewership year to year. I'm sure we're going to see that now with the finals as well. We can talk about this later, Raffi, but I bet it's based off of a few factors. One, it's 2 hockey shows coming out. You had Off Campus, and then you had I forget the other one's name. The one
Heated Rivalry.
Heated Rivalry. And then you had, of course, I think the biggest thing was the Olympics, with hockey being put out on the forefront with Team USA winning both the women's and men's. I think that was definitely plays a huge factor in dragging and bringing attention to the NHL, which is incredibly exciting, I think, for the sport and incredibly exciting for all of us sports fans. With that being said, the World Cup's coming up soon. Stay tuned for our prediction podcast on that. And overall, it's good vibes, Raffi. It's good vibes. How are you? How are the vibes?
Not bad. Another day, another dollar. I have missed somehow all 3 of the Vegas Golden Knights goals. I don't know how I've managed to do that, but every single time I've missed one of the Golden Knights goals, I apologize to Carolina Hurricanes fans, because when I was actively watching, it was 2-0 Hurricanes. But as I'm trying to do this makeshift, as I look, if you see me looking down often, it's because I am watching the game. I will not. We will just get rid of the allegations in the first place. I will fully admit the Stanley Cup finals are happening right now. I am watching the game as we are recording this podcast. You can, anytime I look down, it will be because I'm taking a glance and watching the Stanley Cup final. I hope that doesn't disrespect you at all, Davian. As you know, it's always a pleasure to record with you. But yeah, we have a lot to get to, and this was supposed to be a podcast. It was supposed to be pretty low key. For the most part, it's just going to be World Cup predictions that we're planning on getting uploaded as of now, as this upload's been posted, and if that's the best way to really explain it. But no, there wound up being a lot of news, so we'll just dive right in. First off, we've been meaning to talk about this for a couple weeks now, really a week or two, and that is the new format for the NBA draft lottery. And obviously, we've had our fair share of discussing this via text, but thankfully for us, our text messages are not posted online for everyone to see, only this YouTube podcast where we give our thoughts, so we can be a little bit more measured and be a little bit more reasonable with our takes on this. But Davian, this is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. It's just to put it lightly, and I'll just explain it for those who haven't really been keeping track of it. So it's the 3-2-1 lottery, that's what they're calling it, where the 3 worst finishing teams in the NBA and the NBA season, and this is going to happen for the next couple seasons. starting this upcoming 2027 draft lottery, the 3 worst records will lose a draft lottery ball. So each of those 3 teams will only have 2 lottery balls. The remaining teams to not make the play-in or the playoffs will receive 3 balls. The 9th and 10th play-in seeds will receive 2 balls similar to the bottom 3. They also receive 2 balls. And the losers of the 7-8 playing games also receive 1 lottery ball. So hopefully that makes some sense. Essentially, if you finish between 4 and I believe 10, you get 3 lottery balls. If you finish 9th and 10th in the play-in, you get 2 lottery balls. If you're in the bottom 3, record-wise, I know I'm jumping a little bit, you would get 3, but because of the anti-tanking, you lose a lottery ball. And then the loser of the 7-8 versus 8 playing games also will get will get 1 lottery ball. Pardon me. Those 2 teams will get 1 lottery ball. So all 16 teams will be drawn. Relegated teams can't pick lower than 12th. So if you draw, it's really just an open. You can really just fall from essentially from having the worst odds all the way down to 11 potentially. You can't receive the number 1 overall pick in 2 consecutive years. This is Davian. Before, not to get too granular already and give my thoughts, but can't receive a top 5 pick in 3 consecutive years. As a Blackhawks fan, is absolutely insane. As a team who has picked now in the top 3 for 3 straight years, obviously this year we're picking at 4. That is absurd.
Raffi, you don't even go that far. Look at the Spurs. The Spurs would not be who they are right now if it wasn't, if that rule existed. Yes, they got super lucky in that they got 3 consecutive drafts. That was Wemby, Harper, and Castle. I know it's Wemby, Castle, Harper. That was the order. But that doesn't always happen. Like you don't always have great drafts. Like it's just in the past few years we've had great NBA drafts and great players coming out. But sorry, I don't want to get too much into it. Raffi, continue. So you left off saying you can't repeat picks if you're in the top 4. What are the other?
You can't receive top 5 picks in 3 consecutive years. You can't protect picks top 12 through top 15 in trades, which is whatever. First 16 picks in inverse of first round order, non-lottery teams in inverse of regular season records, which makes sense. In 2029, they'll have the opportunity to either continue this or move to a new system. And overall league discipline, added ability to reduce teams' lottery odds, modify teams' draft positions, and impose significant fines if they feel that a team is doing unethical tanking. So this is a really interesting way to combat tanking. And when you look at, and this is all from the NBA Board of Governors, this is posted online, and they showed the whole odds too. The fact that you can finish worst in the league and have a 25% chance of picking 12th is utterly just makes no sense. The fact that you have a 72% chance of falling out of the top 5 is ridiculous to me. And the fact that you can just miss the postseason, or even just to get eliminated in the play, essentially get eliminated in the play-in, and also have almost the same odds to win the draft lottery as a team that finishes in the bottom 3. We've talked about this before too, and I know I'm a little all over the place. So that's the first thing that's ridiculous. And the main thing for me, Davian, before I hand it over to you for your thoughts, and we can have a little bit more of a discussion, obviously, is the big losers of this is the small market teams. Because these small market teams,
absolutely,
winning the draft lottery is so massive for them because they get a guaranteed commitment to a player for a few seasons that they're going to be on their team. Now, obviously, we all know that there's been situations where players will say, I don't want to play for this team. I want to go here. And they'll kind of pick and choose like their location, which we've seen in the past. And it's rare, but it does happen. But if teams aren't able to just be bad and then just hope that they get lucky with the draft lottery and select a good player, then you're essentially asking them to try to make themselves more marketable to free agents who, as we see, most free agents typically will go to the big market. So if you're a small market team who's bad, like let's say like the Brooklyn Nets, how are you supposed to, like, I know they attracted talent before, but still, it's the same theory, like the Charlotte Hornets, who have been just historically bad, the Memphis Grizzlies, who are small market, like pretty mid team. how are those teams going to get high-end talent if they have such poor chance to win the draft lottery? It just this feels like an overstep, and it feels like they're addressing something that, yes, is a problem. Tanking is certainly an issue in the NBA, but this is just I feel like this is just a massive overcorrection, and people are gonna be really like the Washington Wizards. Like their two of their best players of recent era, Bradley Beal and John Wall, were selected in the draft by the Wizards. The Wizards haven't attracted anyone of note outside of those free agent wise. For this Wizards team, going forward, if they were to be bottom 3, it's just doing them a whole disservice. So I'll hand it over to you, David. I know I've kind of been all over the place, but I'd love to hear your thoughts as well, because this is just a really dumb idea, a dumb concept in my eyes. There were so many other ways that you could have addressed issues in the NBA. This was at the bottom for me personally.
Yeah, Raffi. I mean, look, I do think that tanking is an issue in the NBA to an extent. I do agree. I mean, we've seen some egregious teams just start losing like crazy. And so the idea of causing teams in the bottom 3 to lose a value is to not, like, basically, I agree with the idea that, you should not want to finish in the bottom 3, right? You shouldn't want to finish last, right? Of course, there's the occasions where there's nothing you can do. Your team just sucks. You just always finish last. But we've seen some crazy stuff, Rafi, like people getting injured, like a finger injury, all of a sudden taking someone out of the season. It's been kind of chaotic in that sense. That's where I agree with the NBA. But just the way that they went about this, I don't understand. 1, the repeat picks makes no sense. Not every draft lottery is the same. You're not going to always get the quality players from back-to-back drafts. Also,
look at Ricochet a few years ago.
Exactly. Also, Rafi, why is it top 5? It should be top 4 or top 3 only. Because if you think about it, Rafi, when we think about the draft, right? Any draft, NFL, NHL, NBA, right? There's always like 3 really good players, maybe 4 at most. There's never 5 really good that you're not sure like where they're gonna fall. So 5 picks makes no sense. Maybe 2, maybe like 3. If you want to make the rule like back-to-back years, you can't get the first pick overall. Fine. You know what? I think NBA fans could have lived with that. Also, another thing, when it comes to the play-in teams also having the ability to get a draft pick, that also makes no sense. I get it. You want to boost that play-in, right? You want to make sure teams are kind of being competitive. But it just, and I understand that theory, but I also disagree with that notion that the teams that finish in the bottom 3 can all of a sudden be picking 12. The cap should have been way higher at 8 maybe. It makes no sense for them to have the same odds as a team that made the play-in and that could have gone on a run in the playoffs. That just makes zero sense to me, and it all goes down, Rafi, to exactly what you said. It's the small market teams. You mentioned the Wizards. I'll mention the San Antonio Spurs. You have the Utah Jazz. You have the Memphis Grizzlies. I mean, look at Memphis Grizzlies. I'm not going to lie to you, Rafi. You heard LeBron. You heard all these NBA players. Nobody wants to play in Memphis, right? So if nobody wants to play in Memphis, how are you going to build up the team? How are you going to build up the city? You can't, because if they can't be able to pick in the draft. So that makes no sense to me. And the last thing I'll say on this, Rafi, is the whole idea that this is a long-term solution. Long-term is not 3 years, Rafi. If you're in 3 years all of a sudden going to review this system, then something's wrong. And the last tidbit I'll add is that there have been already NBA trades that have already happened, Rafi. So, for example, the Jaren Jackson trade that happened just 3.5 months ago, right? The Utah Jazz had the number 5 pick last year and the number 2 pick this year. Their pick will be unable to land in the top 5 next year, which immediately, of course, devalues Memphis's pick that they acquired from them, from the Utah Jazz
Which makes no sense.
4 months ago, which makes no sense. Like, there have been actual trades that have just happened, and it's like now they're saying that maybe they'll make an exception for Memphis, but it's like you have to make an exception for all of these teams, and if you start making exceptions, all of a sudden, Raffi, it's complete chaos. And I know that the one thing they want to say is that they want to have everything live now, so instead of like behind the scenes they're doing the picks, like everything will be like it'll be like a show. I like that idea. I like it to be a show. I like that there's an actual like pick. The lotteries are being taken. You don't know until there's no shams.
It's all real time.
Who has the pick? Yeah, it's all real time. It's great. But how are you going to do that real time all of a sudden with like, where you're going to add more balls, take out the balls, given like the circumstances, especially if you're giving an exception to a team like Memphis? I don't know, Raffi. I don't really like this. I think it was a good idea, but I don't like it. And also, with Adam Silver taking such a hard stance on the tanking and taking such a soft stance on flopping, makes no sense to me. Raffi, the other day, Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, went on the Pat McAfee show and said, quote unquote, well, players are just trying to sell a call, and you can't really punish them for that. That's not the exact quote he said, but that's what he was basically implying. I completely disagree with that. What we saw from OKC this past year, especially these playoffs, is terrible. That's not basketball, Raffi. Basketball is when you take a shot, you land on 2 feet. Look, we had the issue with James Harden at one point, that issue of him taking the side step back and then kicking out his feet, right? That issue is alleviated. You can do the same thing. And the thing is, Raffi, what annoys me the most, and I don't want to talk about this too much, is that there are already rules about flopping. They're just not being enforced. Enforce the rules that already exist before you go about making new rules to change the entire league. I like Adam Silver overall. I think that the NBA in general has done a lot to grow, and the viewership ratings show that. The rebound no pun intended, of the viewership, but I'm very disappointed with this, and I hope it doesn't punish the small marquee teams too much, and I really hope luck is on their side because they're really gonna need it.
A few things before we move on. 1, NHL Draft Lottery done live with the ping pong balls. Everything happens in real time. I really like that. As painful as it's been, especially this past one where the Blackhawks dropped from 2 to 4, and I saw it in real time. That sucked. But you know what? I still like it because I remember when the Blackhawks won the draft lottery, everyone's like, oh, it's rigged, this, that. And then they show the actual drawing, and people are still like, this alleviates anything of rigging, anything like that. So it's just, the ping pong balls, you watch it live. I like it. I think that's a good thing, and I like that the NBA is thinking about that. NHL, you have embellishing calls. If a player gets a high stick to the face, that's obviously a high stick. But if the player is like, oh my gosh, and overreacts, they get called for an embellishment too, and that's penalties that take each other off, and it's a 4-on-4. There's no reason why the NBA can't start fouling players for embellishing calls, for embellishment. That is certainly something that they have the ability to do, to cut back on flopping, because that's honestly been not even a focal point, but it's been a thing that's been happening in the NHL this past year, and you don't really see embellishing happening right now because refs made it a very big priority this year to say, okay, we need to be careful and make sure that these players aren't just selling calls and just being like, oh my gosh, I've been touched, oh, I just you can't just fall on your own if you're getting tripped. No, you have to you can't just sell the call. So embellishing is a big thing that happens in the NHL right now, and calling embellishment penalties on players who are essentially flopping. And lastly, for the NBA draft lottery, just to put a bow on it, yeah, this is. I feel like they're punishing teams for, if you're a bad team, you're a bad team. Punishing them to drop all the way to 12 makes no sense. The NHL, you can't move up 2 times in a 5-year span, which honestly is fine. In worst case scenario, the worst you can do in the NHL draft lottery is drop 2 spots, which is honestly, I like that. It's not anything crazy. The Blackhawks, I don't need to worry about them dropping somehow all the way down to 12, and it's this is ridiculous. So I just think that I don't know if this is going to get scrapped or not. I don't know how much we should talk about this. We'll see what happens next year. Obviously, depending on how things go next year, that's obviously going to dictate a lot of things. And also, we talk about value, this, that. This devalues the playing games, too. Because what's to say a team who waltzes into the playing game and they're like, you know what, I don't really think this is our year. You know what, let's just bench our guys and then we can just have a chance. We still have a pretty good chance. We have a similar chance as essentially the bottom three teams to jump up a bunch in the draft lottery. So why not? We could just try our odds too, and it's whatever. Like there's no incentive to really win the game, because if you lose, you still have a decent chance, or at least somewhat of a much better chance than in past years to like.
Rafi, I think that what it does, it pushes teams to compete for that play-in, though. So it's a two-way street, I guess, in that way too.
I guess, but overall, it's
But I do this is definitely it is. Like teams could do that, yeah.
And last but not least, to put a bow on it before we get to some other news that we obviously want to get into as well, it's the fact that like if you trade a pick to another team, that pick should have the ability to go and like if the Jazz finish in the bottom 5, that pick should not be based on the Jazz's rules and the Jazz moving up. It should be based on the fact that now it's Memphis's pick. So if it's unprotected and it goes to Memphis, that's Memphis's control then. That's their pick. It's not. It's the Jazz via the Jazz, but just because the Jazz win the lottery it's like the Blackhawks, if they moved up this year and they traded their unprotected first to a team next year, that pick can still move up in the draft lottery, even though the Blackhawks have done their 2 move-ups in the past 5 years, because it's not under the Blackhawks' control anymore. So that's just my last note overall. Moving on, because we talked a little bit about that, we got to get to the other news, obviously, and obviously I'll save the best for last for you, Davian. Myles Garrett, one of arguably the best non-quarterback in the NFL, got traded to the Los Angeles Rams yesterday, as we're recording this on June 2nd, for Jared Verse, young defensive end, won Defensive Rookie of the Year recently, a 2027 first-round pick, a 2028 second-round pick, and a 2029 third-round pick. Davian, I remember when I was talking about Matthew Stafford and saying, well, he should have taken less money, so then the Rams could add another good player, this, that. No, they just said, you know what? No, we can pay Matthew Stafford this much money on his extension and go out and get Myles Garrett. The Rams have completely said just F them picks, which I completely understand. And for the Rams, I'm all in on this trade. This is a brilliant trade to make. I'm a big fan of it. And Myles Garrett just led the NFL in sacks. He's 30 years old, but he's not slowing down anytime soon. And although I wouldn't put my eggs in the Ty Simpson basket, the Rams are essentially saying, this is our QB of the future. We don't care about first-round picks or any picks, honestly, because we have we're banking on Ty Simpson being our franchise quarterback. Thus, we don't really need to move up for a quarterback in the future, so we're just going to have him sit. And if that gamble does pay off, absolutely fantastic. Heck, the Rams could win the Super Bowl this upcoming season, and it's a win regardless of if Ty Simpson pans out or not. But I have no issues with this trade for the Rams. I get the perspective of the Browns making this trade, but this is just a fantastic move for the Rams, who, as long as they just figure out their special teams, they should be winning the Super Bowl next year. I think they're the clear favorite at this point in time right now.
Absolutely, Raffi, and we don't need to talk about this too much because I think on paper this is one of the best trades both teams could do. One, the Browns save a lot in terms of the salary cap. They don't need to pay Jared Verse a lot this year. They will pay Verse later on down the line when they need to, or they could trade him again for even more value potentially. I think that Myles Garrett is amazing, but at the end of the day, he is 30 at this point. That is not that old, but it's also not that young either. And so
by the time the Browns are going to be good again, he's going to be in his mid to late 30s.
Exactly. So right. Exactly. And I think, you get a first round pick. I think they could have gotten a bit more draft value. Yes, I think Jared Verse is great. I don't think that – I know that the Browns said they started adjusting the draft pick value once Verse was in the trade package as well. I think they could have gotten a bit more out of it, maybe some trade swaps or something of that sort. But in any case, I think that this is a great pick by the Rams. You're going all in. And now, Rafi, you have Aaron Donald potentially considering unretiring because the Super Bowl is going to be in SoFi Stadium in LA. I mean, if Aaron Donald unretires and comes back onto the field, the Rams are not on just dangerous. This is going to be one of the best trades of all time on book. This trade alone will be the reason why the Rams will win the Super Bowl. Finally, I will say Jacoby Brissett, I know you're holding out because of money issues. I think you should continue holding out. And I'm going to quote Raffi for this because this is what Raffi texted me the other day, for safety issues, because I do fear for his safety playing against these Rams.
He will be losing a lot of money if he goes into this upcoming season without a contract extension. Because his stats are going to look terrible on this Cardinals team. David, the Cardinals, I think, are just as... I've already penciled the Cardinals in for at least 6 losses for sure. Trust me, it was going to be more than that. But you're not beating any of these teams in the division. I would be incredibly surprised. And I'm going to make the same comment I've made numerous times before. And surely I won't get burned this time. But as long as the Rams don't shoot themselves in the foot, they should be on a trajectory to make the Super Bowl. Now, they figure out the special teams. They got a new coach for their special teams. We'll hope it works out. But genuinely, they can. This is honestly like Madden. This is like when you're watching a Madden rebuild, and whoever you're watching is on the last of the rebuild, and they're just going all in. So they just start making ridiculous trades because who cares? They're done with the franchise mode after this year, so it's for the future GM to worry about all the nonsense of the aftermath of this. This is essentially that, where it's like, okay, well, this is the last year of our rebuild on YouTube. We're just gonna make all these trades. You know what? We're gonna get Myles Garrett. We're gonna do this. We're gonna get Trent McDuffie. This, that. Like, why not? And it's just like whatever. I respect it. Yeah. I respect the aggressiveness.
The Matthew Stafford show is ending, so you got to blow it all up. But while the Rams might be blowing up their future draft value, the Eagles are definitely building up their draft picks, especially with Howie Roseman trading A.J. Brown finally. So we know A.J. Brown was not a happy camper with the Philadelphia Eagles. Of course, he had the cryptic tweets and Instagram posts about the team. There was rumors about him and Jalen Hurts not being very close as much anymore. And so the saga has come to an end. A.J. Brown is officially a Patriot, reunited with Mike Vrabel, who on the draft day when he was traded away from the Titans, Mike Vrabel walked out of the room seemingly looking incredibly disappointed. This is a great trade, I think, on both sides. But I will say I think that the Patriots won simply because they didn't get more screwed. Because this is Howie Roseman, Raffi. He plays like he has all the cards. And in this situation, he kind of did. Because he could have easily started calling up other teams and really talking about, other teams could have gone for A.J. Brown and given much possibly better draft value, wanting to get a number one wide receiver like that. I think that the Patriots gave up, they gave up a first, but it wasn't this year's first, right? This happened after the draft. It's not next year's first, it's the year after. So I think it was a great trade on both sides. Drake May finally gets his wide receiver number one. And I think overall it's a great trade. The same way, speaking about great, Raffi, I want to hear your thoughts, not on just A.J. Brown, but to end off the podcast, I also want to hear your thoughts about the New York Giants signing Alex Earl's ex-boyfriend, Braxton Berrios, Odell Beckham Jr. and OBJ, bringing home the legend, and the TikTok legend in Juju Smith-Schuster.
I don't know if the Giants are trying to do play football next year, or if they're trying to get a reality TV show going in New York, or they're just getting ready for... I've completely been blanking on what the show's called. Davian, what's the show called before the season starts where they go with the teams? I'm Hard Knocks. Or they're just trying to make a very entertaining edition of Hard Knocks. I don't know, but yeah, they definitely have some interesting personas.
I mean, Ralph, they only signed them for $4 million. They signed them all on, vet minimum, so why not?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Bringing back OBJ was certainly interesting. I don't have any issues with it, but I was just like, okay, sure, we'll see what happens. They're all buy low. Maybe they do stuff, maybe they don't. It's really whatever. It's essentially a bunch of just washed players who maybe they have a second win and wind up doing well. So I have nothing against any of them, obviously. And then just provide my thoughts on A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown was a guy that I pursued heavily, and I mean heavily, in 2024 fantasy football. I tried to move so much to get and acquire a guy like A.J. Brown on my fantasy team, and I failed. I could not get A.J. Brown. So I'm glad if one of us can get A.J. Brown, I'm glad you were able to get A.J. Brown. I didn't take A.J. Brown in fantasy last year. I'm very glad I didn't because he was terrible. And yes, Raffi is basing his knowledge on A.J. Brown based on his stats last year. He didn't have a great year. He was injured. It was definitely beneath his standards, by far his worst year in Philly. And for Philly, you have Devonta Smith. You don't really need, and then they just took another wide receiver. They're pretty set overall in the receiving room, even with A.J. Brown being gone. I think the Patriots arguably could have gone a little bit less. I think this is pretty fair, but I was honestly expecting maybe like a second round pick or 2 seconds or something like that. I know that's splitting hairs at the end of the day, but for the Patriots, you go out and get your guy, which obviously you gotta do what you gotta do. And for the Eagles, I think they got good value recouping a first round pick for A.J. Brown. Obviously, A.J. Brown getting up there in age. I believe he's 29 this upcoming. I think he turns 29 later this month, if I remember correctly. But the Eagles have some more money to work with. They have another asset in terms of a draft pick, a first round pick. So honestly, pretty good trade for both sides. And yeah, we'll see what happens. Obviously, Davian, I know you're excited. We've been counting down the days over the past few months to not only the World Cup, but for June 1st, obviously, for the A.J. Brown trade. And that's exactly what happened. The Patriots didn't get screwed over by another team coming in last second. So this was probably what was needed to be done in order to make the deal happen. And we'll see what ends up happening. A.J. Brown, I think he will have a bounce back year next year. He'll be cemented as a guy. Drake May, just so much charisma, so nonchalant, so much aura. How can you not like Drake May? It's just really hard just not to like and just love this man. So obviously we know a lot of Drake May lovers, Davian, you being one of them. So it's going to be hard for A.J. Brown to not like Drake May. So I'm sure he'll be joining the Drake May fan club very shortly in short order, as he'll be getting the ball a lot on the account of, I think the next best wide receiver is Kayshon Boutte on the New England Patriots. So Davian, any final thoughts before we close out the podcast just in general with what we discussed or anything else?
Drake May.
May?
Yeah.
Yes. It may be June, but it's always the month of May for Davian. And on that note, we will close the podcast. Let us know in the comments below your guys' thoughts on the draft lottery, the A.J. Brown trade, and the Myles Garrett trade in the comments below. We'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on our opinions and just relaying your opinions as well. For Davian, I'm Raffi. We hope you enjoyed. And as always, have a good one. See ya.
Peace.